The stars looked the same as they always had. But everything else had changed. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon, watching the view screen display the approaching alien vessel. It was the year 2247, and humanity was about to make first contact with an advanced species. The ship that appeared on their sensors was massive, easily 3 times the size of the horizon. Its hull was dark, almost black, with strange markings that glowed with a purple light. Jake felt his heart race as he watched it approach. This was the moment humanity had dreamed about for centuries. "Open a channel," Jake said to his communications officer. "Let them know we come in peace." The Cathrons, as they called themselves, were unlike anything humans had imagined. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with scaled skin that shifted between green and brown. Their eyes were cold and calculating, with vertical pupils that made them look like ancient predators from Earth. But Jake pushed aside his fear and extended his hand in greeting. The Cathrin ambassador, whose name translated roughly to Vorath, looked at the offered hand for a long moment before reaching out with his clawed appendage. The touch was brief and cold. Through the translator device, Vorath spoke in a voice that sounded like gravel scraping against metal. "We acknowledge your presence," Vorath said. "Your species is young. We will consider relations." Jake smiled, hopeful. "We would like to offer a treaty of friendship. We can share technology, culture, and resources. Together, we can build something great." Vorath's expression did not change. "We will consider it." That was how it began. 15 years of humanity reaching out, offering everything they had, and receiving almost nothing in return. Admiral Linda Hayes had been in charge of the Unified Earth Defense Council for 10 of those 15 years. She sat in her office on Mars Station, reviewing the latest reports. Humanity had sent medical supplies to Cathrin colonies when a plague struck. They had shared farming technology that could feed billions. They had even sent engineering teams to help rebuild Cathrin stations damaged by natural disasters. "What do we get in return?" asked Commander Rick Palmer, one of her top officers. He stood across from her desk, frustration clear on his face. Linda sighed. "Cultural data, some limited trade, the chance for peace." "Cultural data," Rick repeated. "We give them everything, and they give us movies and history lessons." "Peace is worth the price," Linda said. But even she was starting to wonder if that was true. President Daniel Cross believed in the diplomatic approach with all his heart. Every year, he stood before the United Earth Assembly and talked about the importance of patience. Every year, he sent more gifts to the Cathron Empire. "They control 17 star systems," Cross told the Assembly. "They have technology we can barely understand. If we can befriend them, imagine what humanity could achieve. But if we make them enemies, we might not survive the war." The representatives voted to continue the peace offerings. What else could they do? Ben Carter was a civilian engineer who had volunteered to help the Cathrins repair a damaged orbital station. He spent 6 months working in Cathrin space, living among them, trying to understand their culture. What he learned troubled him. "They do not respect kindness," Ben told Dr. Amy Sullivan when he returned to Earth. "Every time we help them, every time we give them something, they see it as proof that we are weak." Amy had spent years developing agricultural technology for the Cathrins. She had hoped it would bring the two species closer together. "Maybe they just need more time to understand us," she said. Ben shook his head. "I do not think time will change anything. They look at us like we are food." But the peace efforts continued. Humanity kept extending the olive branch, kept offering friendship, kept hoping that persistence would win over the Cathrin Empire. Then came the day that changed everything. New Haven was a colony world on the edge of human space. 2 million people lived there, farming the rich soil and building a new life among the stars. It was a peaceful place, far from any conflict. The colonists knew about the Cathrins, but they had never worried about them. Humanity and the Cathrin Empire were at peace. When the colony went silent, Rick Palmer was the closest military officer. He commanded a small patrol ship that was 3 hours away. He pushed his engines to maximum speed, fear growing in his chest with every passing minute. "New Haven," This is Commander Palmer. Please respond. He called over and over. Only static answered him. When Rick arrived at New Haven, his hands began to shake. The colony was gone. Not abandoned or evacuated. Gone. The cities were melted slag. The farms were burned to ash. The orbital stations were debris floating in space. 2 million people had been killed in what looked like a systematic attack. Rick's scanners picked up weapon signatures. He knew those patterns. He had studied them during the cultural exchanges. They were Cathron plasma weapons. This had not been an accident. This had not been a mistake. The Cathrons had attacked a defenseless human colony and killed everyone there. "Get me Admiral Hayes," Rick said, his voice shaking. "Get me the President. Get me everyone. We have been attacked." The news reached Earth within hours. President Cross called an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. Admiral Hayes mobilized every military unit she had. Across human space, people watched the reports in horror and disbelief. Ambassador Gregory Wells, who had spent 12 years working on Cathron relations, refused to believe it. "It must have been a rogue faction," he insisted. "The Cathron government would never authorize such an attack. We have treaties. We have agreements." Karen Mitchell was chosen to lead a new delegation to the Cathron Empire. She was humanity's best negotiator, calm and professional even in the worst situations. She carried with her a message demanding answers and accountability. The Cathrons never responded to her delegation. Instead, they responded with action. 3 more colonies fell in the next week. New Dublin, Port Freedom, and Terra Verde. Each attack was the same. Fast, brutal, and complete. The Cathron fleets arrived without warning, destroyed everything, and left. Over 8 million human lives were erased in 7 days. Intelligence officer Chris Bennett worked without sleep, trying to decrypt Cathron communications. When he finally broke their codes, what he found made him sick. The Cathrons had been planning this for years. Every gift humanity sent had been studied. Every peaceful gesture had been recorded as evidence of weakness. The Cathrons had used the 15 years of peace to learn everything about human colonies, defenses, and culture. They had been preparing for conquest, and humanity had helped them do it. Dr. Laura Price presented her analysis to the Defense Council. She was a xenopsychologist, an expert in alien cultures. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled as she showed her findings. "The Cathron culture values strength above everything else," she explained. "They see diplomacy as something the weak do. Every time we offered peace, every time we sent gifts, they saw it as proof that we were inferior. To them, we were not friends, we were prey." Admiral Patricia Cole had commanded border patrols for a decade. She had watched the peace process with growing doubt. Now, standing before the council, she said what everyone was thinking. They never wanted peace. They wanted to study us, learn our weaknesses, and then destroy us. We gave them 15 years to prepare. The attack on New Haven had shocked humanity to its core, but many still hoped for a peaceful solution. Ambassador Gregory Wells stood before the United Earth Council, his voice urgent and pleading. "We cannot rush to judgment," Wells said. "Perhaps this was a military faction acting without authorization. Perhaps there was a misunderstanding. We should send another delegation before we do something we cannot take back." Admiral Linda Hayes listened to him speak, but she did not believe his words anymore. She had seen the reports. She had watched the recordings of the destroyed colonies. This was not a misunderstanding. This was war. Still, the council voted to send one more delegation. Karen Mitchell was chosen to lead it. She was experienced, careful, and known for her ability to find common ground even in difficult situations. If anyone could reach the Cathrons, it would be her. Karen took a small diplomatic ship and headed for Cathron space. She carried messages from President Cross, from the Council, from the families of the dead. She carried hope for peace, even though that hope was fading fast. She never reached the Cathron homeworld. 3 days into her journey, the Cathron fleet struck again. New Dublin was a mining colony with 3 million people. The attack came in the middle of the night. Catherine warships appeared in orbit and began firing without warning. The colony's defenses were minimal, designed to protect against pirates and asteroids, not military fleets. They lasted less than 10 minutes. Port Freedom fell next. It was a trading hub where humans and several other species lived and worked together. The Catherines did not care about the other species. They killed everyone. 2 million souls gone in an afternoon. Terra Verde was the worst. It was a farming world. Peaceful and beautiful. Families had lived there for generations. The Catherines spent hours destroying it, making sure nothing survived. Not the cities, not the farms, not even the forests. 3 million people died screaming. Commander Rick Palmer was at Port Freedom when it happened. His patrol ship had been reassigned to protect the colony after New Haven. But his single ship could do nothing against the Catherine fleet. He watched helplessly as the colony burned. "Fall back," his second officer urged. "We cannot help them. We need to survive to warn the others." Rick wanted to fight. He wanted to die trying to save those people. But his officer was right. He ordered the retreat, and the guilt of that decision would stay with him forever. Karen Mitchell's ship was intercepted before she could turn back. The Catherines boarded her vessel, took her entire delegation prisoner, and sent a message back to Earth. The message was simple. There would be no more talks. Intelligence officer Chris Bennett had been working around the clock since New Haven. He had a team of 30 people, all experts in cryptography and alien languages. They had been trying to break Catherine communications for years with limited success. Now, with war beginning, they pushed harder. The breakthrough came on the 5th day. A junior analyst named Sophie Grant found a pattern in the Catherine military broadcasts. Once they had that pattern, the rest fell into place. Within hours, they were reading Catherine messages in real time. What they found was worse than anyone had imagined. Chris brought the decrypted messages to Admiral Hayes. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he handed her the tablet. Hayes read in silence, her expression growing darker with each line. The messages revealed everything. The Catherines had been planning this invasion for over a decade. Every human gift had been analyzed for weaknesses. Every cultural exchange had been used to map human psychology. Every treaty had been studied to find loopholes and vulnerabilities. The Catherines had databases on human colony defenses. They knew which worlds had strong militaries and which were defenseless. They knew trade routes, supply lines, and communication networks. Humanity had given them all of this information freely, believing it would build trust, but the worst part was the reasoning behind it all. The Catherine military command had debated whether humans were worth conquering. Some argued that humanity was too weak to bother with. Others said that human worlds had valuable resources. In the end, they decided to attack because humanity's constant peace offerings had convinced them that humans would not fight back. The Catherines believed that any species that tried so hard to avoid conflict must be cowards. They thought the invasion would be easy. Dr. Laura Price had been studying Catherine culture since first contact. She was called to brief the military leadership on what the decrypted messages meant. The Catherine Empire has conquered 12 other species, Laura explained. Each time, they followed the same pattern. They make contact, they study their target, and then they attack. But usually, they only study for a year or two. With us, they took 15 years. Why so long? Asked General Vincent Harper, head of Special Warfare Command. Because we confused them, Laura said. Most species either show strength immediately or show weakness immediately. We showed both. We had advanced technology, strong ships, and capable people, but we kept offering peace, kept giving them gifts, kept refusing to show aggression. They could not understand it, so they decided we were weak, Harper said. Worse than that, Laura replied. They decided we were weak and stupid. They think we do not understand how the universe works. They think we are children playing at being adults. That is why they are not worried about our response. They do not believe we will fight back effectively. Admiral Patricia Cole had been quiet during most of the briefing. She had commanded border patrols for years and had always worried about the Catherines. Now, her worst fears were coming true. "What about the other species they conquered?" Cole asked. "Are any of them still alive?" Laura's expression turned grim. 3 of the 12 species still exist, but only as slave populations. The other 9 were completely wiped out when they tried to resist. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. If humanity lost this war, it would be the end of everything. President Cross received hourly updates on the situation. The news got worse each time. 8 million dead. Karen Mitchell's delegation captured or killed. More Catherine fleets moving toward human space. The council was in chaos, with some members demanding immediate retaliation and others still hoping for a diplomatic solution. Cross made his decision. He called a special session of the United Earth Assembly. Every representative attended, either in person or by hologram. The gallery was packed with observers. Billions watched on screens across human space. Cross stood at the podium, his face hard. He was 60 years old and had spent his entire presidency working for peace. Now, he had to prepare his people for war. 15 years ago, we met the Catherine Empire. Cross began. We offered them friendship. We offered them trade. We offered them everything we had, hoping to build a better future for both our species. We believed that peace was always possible, if we just tried hard enough. He paused, looking out at the assembly. We were wrong. The Catherines never wanted peace. They wanted conquest. They used our kindness to prepare for our destruction. They studied us, learned our weaknesses, and planned our extinction. And now they have killed 8 million of our people. The assembly was silent. Cross continued, "I have spent my career avoiding war. I believed that violence was never the answer. But the Catherines have taught me something important. Peace requires 2 sides. When only one side wants peace, what you have is not peace. It is surrender." Cross straightened his shoulders. "I am hereby declaring a state of war between humanity and the Catherine Empire. All military forces are to mobilize immediately. All defense protocols are now active. We offered them peace for 15 years. What we got in return was fire and fury. Now they will learn what those words truly mean when humanity speaks them." The assembly voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity was going to general. Vincent Harper had been waiting for this day, though he had prayed it would never come. He stood in the command center of Special Warfare Command, deep beneath the surface of Mars. Around him, screens displayed data that most people did not know existed. For 15 years, while diplomats talked and politicians hoped, Harper and his team had been preparing. They had designed weapons that were too terrible to use in peacetime. They had created battle plans for enemies they hoped never to fight. They had trained soldiers in tactics that seemed excessive when humanity was at peace. Now, all of that preparation would be put to use. "Activate Protocol Hammer," Harper ordered. His staff moved quickly, entering codes and authorizing releases. Across human space, secure vaults opened. Weapons systems came online. Units that had been training in secret received their deployment orders. The Cathrons had studied humanity for 15 years. But they had only seen what humanity wanted them to see. They had watched a peaceful species, trying to build friendships. They had not seen the warriors waiting in the shadows. Dr. Peter Yang led the research team at Luna Station. For 12 years, they had been working on quantum disruption technology. The theory was simple: attack matter at the subatomic level, and nothing could stop you. Not armor, not shields, not distance. The practical application had been incredibly difficult. The equipment was massive and unstable. The power requirements were enormous. And the ethical questions were troubling. A weapon that could destroy anything was a weapon that could destroy everything. "Are we ready to deploy?" asked Admiral Hayes when she visited the station. Peter looked at the prototype, a machine the size of a small building. "The technology works," he said carefully. "But Linda, once we use this, we cannot pretend to be peaceful anymore. Every species in the galaxy will know what we are capable of. Hayes met his eyes. 8 million people are dead, Peter. The Catherines are coming to kill millions more. We tried peace. Now we need to survive. Peter nodded slowly. Then yes, we are ready. Captain Rachel Morris commanded the shipyards in orbit around Jupiter. For 10 years, those yards had been building cargo ships, colony vessels, and exploration craft. But Morris and her team had been quietly working on other designs. The Mjolnir-class destroyer existed only in classified documents. It was larger than any military ship humanity had built before. Its armor was designed to withstand hits from weapons that did not exist yet. Its engines could push it to speeds that would tear apart normal vessels. And its weapons were built to kill on a scale that made traditional warships look like toys. "How many can we deploy?" Admiral Cole asked during her inspection. "We have 42 completed," Morris replied. "Another 60 should be ready within 3 months. After that, we can produce 10 per month if we convert all civilian production." Cole did a quick calculation in her head. "That will not be enough if the Catherines send their full fleet. Then we will need to make each one count," Morris said. Colonel Steve Fisher ran the Marine Training Facility on New Mars. His job for the past 8 years had been to train soldiers for peacekeeping missions, but Fisher had served in the border wars before first contact with the Catherines. He remembered what real combat looked like. The new recruits came in expecting to learn crowd control and disaster relief. Instead, Fisher taught them how to kill. He taught them urban warfare, boarding actions, and guerrilla tactics. He taught them to be fast, efficient, and merciless when necessary. "Why are we learning this?" one recruit asked. "We are at peace." "We were at peace," Fisher corrected. "Now we are at war, and the enemy needs to learn that humans are not prey." The transformation of human civilization happened at a speed that shocked even those who planned it. Factories that made furniture started making ammunition. Civilian ships had weapons bolted to their hulls. Scientists who studied alien plants began studying alien anatomy to find weaknesses. Lieutenant Helen Drake had been a navigation officer on a cargo ship. She had never expected to see combat. Then, the New Haven massacre happened, and Helen learned that her parents and younger brother had been there. They had been visiting the colony for a wedding. Helen volunteered for the first strike team. She was not the only one. Thousands of civilians joined the military in the weeks after the attacks. They came from every colony, every station, every ship. They came for revenge. They came for justice. They came to make sure no one else lost their family. The training was brutal. The instructors pushed them hard, knowing that soldiers who were not ready would die. Helen pushed herself harder than anyone. She learned to shoot, to fight, to survive. She learned to kill without hesitation. "Why do you want this?" her training officer asked during an evaluation. "Because the Catherines think we are weak," Helen replied. "I want to show them they are wrong." Admiral Cole addressed the fleet from the bridge of the Retribution, the newest and most powerful ship in human space. Behind her, 40 Mjolnir-class destroyers waited in formation. Around them, hundreds of converted civilian ships stood ready for war. "For 15 years, we offered the Catherines our best," Cole said. Her voice was broadcast to every ship, every station, every colony. "We showed them our science, our culture, our hope for peace. We gave them everything we had, asking for nothing but friendship in return." She paused, letting her words sink in. "They took everything we offered and decided we were weak. They studied us, learned our secrets, and planned our destruction. They killed 8 million of our people. They think we will surrender without a fight." Cole's voice grew harder. "They are about to learn how wrong they are. We did not offer peace because we were weak. We offered peace because we are strong enough to choose it, but they have taken that choice from us. Now they will face humanity at war." The fleet erupted in cheers. Thousands of voices joined together, ready for battle. The mobilization continued. Mining operations in the asteroid belt were converted to produce raw materials for weapons. Agricultural stations shifted to military rations. Terraforming equipment was repurposed to build fortifications. Every human world prepared for invasion. Defense platforms were built in orbit. Civilians were trained in basic combat. Evacuation plans were created and practiced. Humanity had tried to avoid this moment for 15 years. Now that it was here, they would face it with everything they had. Ben Carter, the engineer who had worked with the Catherines, volunteered to help design attack strategies. He knew their stations, their technology, their weaknesses. He had been inside their facilities, seen how they built things, understood how they thought. They relied too much on their shields. Ben explained to a group of officers. Their armor is weak underneath. If you can get past the shields, the ships fall apart quickly. Can we get past the shields? Asked Commander Rick Palmer. Ben smiled. With the quantum weapons, yes. The shields will not stop us. Dr. Amy Sullivan, who had developed farming technology for the Catherines, felt sick about how her work had been used. The Catherines had taken her gift and used it to feed their armies while they planned to attack humanity. She wanted to do something to make it right. Sullivan joined the biological warfare research team. If the Catherines wanted to play dirty, humanity could play that game too. She began developing diseases tailored to Catherine biology. The weapons were never meant to be used on civilian populations, but military targets were fair game. Are you sure about this? Asked her colleague. This is not what you signed up for. No, Amy agreed. I signed up to help people. But the Catherines made sure that helping them only made things worse. Now, I will help my own species survive. President Cross watched the mobilization reports with mixed feelings. He had spent his career building peace. Now he was overseeing the largest military buildup in human history. Ships were being armed. Soldiers were being trained. Weapons were being deployed. Do you think we can win? Asked his chief of staff. Cross looked at the data. The Catherines had a larger fleet, more experience, and controlled more systems. But they had made one critical mistake. They had given humanity 15 years to prepare while thinking humans would never use that time to build weapons. Yes, Cross said finally. We can win. The Catherines think we are weak because we chose peace. They are about to learn what we chose not to be. The final piece of the mobilization was psychological. Humanity needed to believe they could win. Admiral Hayes approved a series of messages to be broadcast across all human space. The messages were simple and direct. They showed the destroyed colonies. They listed the names of the dead. They explained how the Catherines had used humanity's gifts to plan genocide. And the first human counterstrike hit the Catherine military depot at Sector 7 like a hammer from the gods. The Catherines had been expecting resistance. But not like this. Not this fast. Not this brutal. Commander Jack Peterson led the vanguard. His squadron of 30 Mjolnir-class destroyers dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. The Catherine defenders barely had time to raise their shields before the attack began. All ships, fire at will, Peterson ordered calmly. The quantum mines deployed first. They were small devices, barely visible on sensors. But when they hit the Catherine shields, something impossible happened. The shields simply stopped existing. Matter at the subatomic level was disrupted, and the protective barriers collapsed like they were never there. The Catherine commanders had seconds to realize what was happening before the railguns fired. Solid projectiles moving at a fraction of light speed punched through the now unprotected hulls. Catherine cruisers that had survived dozens of battles exploded into clouds of gas and metal. The entire engagement lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, the Catherine depot was destroyed, and all 37 defending ships were gone. Peterson's squadron had not lost a single vessel. Report to command, Peterson said to his communications officer. Sector 7 is secure. No human casualties. Proceeding to next target. The news reached the Catherine High Command within hours. They could not believe the reports. A full battle group destroyed in 11 minutes? By only 30 human ships? It had to be a mistake. They sent a larger force to investigate. That force never reported back. Admiral Cole watched the battle reports from the bridge of the Retribution. The strategy was working better than anyone had hoped. Human forces were not just winning battles, they were winning them decisively, with minimal losses. "The quantum weapons are making all the difference," reported Captain Rachel Morris. "The Cathrons have no defense against them. Their entire military doctrine is based on shield technology. Without shields, their ships are just targets." "What about their numerical advantage?" Cole asked. "The Cathrons had a larger fleet. Even if human ships were more effective, numbers could still win wars. We are targeting their logistics," Morris explained. "Every supply depot, every repair station, every fuel facility. We are not trying to destroy their entire fleet at once. We are making it impossible for them to operate." It was a strategy that humans had learned from their own history. You did not need to kill every enemy soldier. You just needed to make it impossible for them to fight. Colonel Susan Martinez led ground forces on the moon of Tharsis Prime. It was a Cathron supply hub, critical to their military operations in 3 different sectors. The Cathrons had 5,000 soldiers defending it, dug into fortified positions. Martinez had 800 Marines. On paper, it should have been a bloodbath. The Cathrons thought so too. The attack began at night. Using stealth technology the Cathrons did not know humans possessed. Martinez's teams moved through the base like ghosts, taking out communications first, then power systems, then command centers. By the time the Cathron soldiers realized they were under attack, half their officers were dead. The fighting was brutal but brief. Human Marines had better training, better equipment, and better tactics. More importantly, they fought with a fury that the Cathrons had never seen before. Every Marine remembered the 8 million dead. Every Marine had someone they were fighting for. 18 hours after the attack began, Tharsis Prime was under human control. Martinez lost 43 Marines. The Cathrons lost all 5,000 defenders. "Do you want prisoners?" asked one of Martinez's officers. Martinez thought about New Haven, about Port Freedom, about Terra Verde. The Cathrons had not taken prisoners. "No," she said coldly, "but we are not like them. Take anyone who surrenders. Treat them according to the rules of war. We are here to win, not to become monsters." The Cathron High Command finally realized they had made a terrible mistake. They called an emergency session to discuss the human counterattack. The military leaders who had been so confident a month ago now looked worried. "How are they doing this?" demanded the senior general, whose name translated roughly to Craxith. "Our intelligence said the humans were weak. They said humans would not fight." "Our intelligence was wrong," admitted the chief analyst. "The humans were never weak. They were choosing not to fight. There is a difference." Craxith slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Then, what are they? What kind of species hides their strength for 15 years? "A smart one," the analyst replied quietly. "The Cathrons sent their most experienced battle commander to stop the human advance." Admiral Vorthak had conquered 4 species in his career. He commanded 200 warships, the largest Cathron fleet ever assembled in one place. He met Captain Andrew Foster's tactical group at the Krendel system. Foster had 60 ships, less than a third of Vorthak's force. The Cathron admiral was confident. Numbers always won in the end. The battle was a disaster for the Cathrons. Foster did not fight the way they expected. Instead of a direct engagement, he split his forces into small groups that hit from multiple angles. The quantum weapons made it impossible for the Cathrons to form a defensive line, and Foster's ships moved faster, shot more accurately, and coordinated better than anything Vorthak had seen. By the time Vorthak ordered a retreat, he had lost 140 ships. Foster lost 9. Vorthak reported back to the High Command. "These humans are not soldiers," he said. "They are hunters. And we are the prey." Dr. Peter Yang's quantum weapons were only part of the human advantage. The real difference was tactical innovation. Humans had studied warfare for thousands of years. Every battle, every strategy, every mistake had been recorded and learned from. Captain Foster spent his evenings reading about ancient Earth battles. He studied Alexander the Great, Napoleon, and modern commanders. He adapted their tactics for space combat. The Cathrons had more experience with space battles, but they fought the same way every time. Foster never did. Major Lisa Turner led the bomber wings. Her job was to destroy Catherine military installations while avoiding civilian casualties. It was precision work that required perfect timing and incredible skill. Target the command center, Turner ordered her squadron as they approached a Catherine military base. Civilian housing is 500 meters east. Do not miss. They did not miss. The command center was destroyed with a single strike. The housing was untouched. Turner's pilots were the best humanity had. And they proved it. With every mission, the Cathrons started to notice that humans were not targeting civilians. Military bases were destroyed, but cities were left alone. Soldiers were killed, but refugees were spared. It confused them. Why would humans show mercy when the Cathrons had shown none? It is psychological warfare, explained the Catherine intelligence chief. They want us to believe they are morally superior. It is a trick, but it was not a trick. Humanity had rules about warfare. Even in their fury, even with 8 million dead calling for revenge, humans maintained their principles. They would kill soldiers and destroy military targets. But they would not become the monsters the Cathrons had been. Commander Rick Palmer finally got his chance for revenge. He had been at Port Freedom, had watched helplessly as the Cathrons destroyed the colony. Now he commanded a strike force heading for the Catherine shipyards at Valthon. Valthon was heavily defended. It was too important to fall. The Catherons had 3 full battle groups protecting it. Rick had 40 ships. This is suicide, said his second officer. No, Rick replied. This is payback. The attack began with the quantum mines. As always, Cathron shields vanished. Then came the railguns, tearing through hulls. But Rick did not stop at destroying the defending fleet. He pushed forward, his ships moving into the shipyards themselves. Take out every ship under construction, Rick ordered. Every crane, every dock, every facility. I want nothing left. His crews obeyed. By the time they withdrew, Valthon was a graveyard. 50 Cathron warships that had been weeks from completion were now scrap metal. The production facilities that could build them were rubble. Rick lost 12 ships, but the Cathrons lost their primary construction facility. It would take them years to rebuild it. The war had been raging for 6 months, and humanity was winning. 12 of the 17 Cathron systems had fallen to human control. The remaining 5 were under siege. The mighty empire that had terrorized a dozen species was being destroyed by the prey they thought was weak. Admiral Cole reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The Cathron military was in chaos. Their supply lines were broken. Their fleets were scattered. Their morale was collapsing. Some Cathron commanders were already trying to surrender, though the High Command refused to acknowledge defeat. How long until we reach their homeworld? Cole asked. 6 months into the war, the Cathron Empire was dying. Their fleets were shattered. Their supply lines were cut. Their colonies were falling one by one. The species that had conquered 12 others was now on its knees, begging the prey they had tried to devour for mercy. The surrender offer arrived on Earth exactly 1 year after the New Haven massacre. President Daniel Cross sat in his office, reading the message for the 3rd time. The Cathrons were offering generous terms. They would retreat to their homeworld. They would pay reparations. They would swear eternal peace. All humanity had to do was stop the advance and let them survive. Ambassador Gregory Wells stood before the council, advocating for acceptance. He looked older now, worn down by the year of war. His belief in peace had been shaken, but not destroyed. The war is won, Wells argued. We have beaten them. They know it. We know it. The galaxy knows it. Now is the time to show mercy. If we push forward and destroy their homeworld, we become the monsters we fought against. Admiral Linda Hayes listened to his speech. She had heard similar arguments before. Part of her even agreed with them, but another part, The part that had seen 8 million names on the casualty lists. The part that had watched colonies burn. Wanted justice. Mercy, Hayes said quietly when it was her turn to speak, is something we offered for 15 years. We sent them medicine when they were sick. We fed them when they were hungry. We helped rebuild their stations when disasters struck, and they responded with genocide. She stood, her voice growing harder. They did not attack our military. They attacked civilians. Women, children, families who never hurt anyone. They killed 8 million people, not because those people were a threat, but because the Catherines wanted to prove a point. And now they want mercy? The council chamber fell silent. Hayes continued, I am not saying we should exterminate them. I am saying we should remember what they did. We offered peace from strength, and they saw it as weakness. Now they face destruction, and suddenly they understand the value of mercy. But mercy must be earned, not demanded. General Vincent Harper proposed an alternative plan. The Catherine Empire would be dismantled completely. Every world they had conquered would be freed. The Catherine military would be reduced to a small defensive force, monitored by human peacekeepers for the next 100 years. They will pay reparations, Harper explained. Not in money, but in work. They will help rebuild what they destroyed. They will serve the families of those they killed. And they will learn that actions have consequences. President Cross considered both arguments. He had spent his entire presidency working for peace. Now he had to decide the fate of an entire species. The choice would define humanity's place in the galaxy. We will accept the surrender, Cross finally said. But on our terms, not theirs. The Catherine Empire ends today. What they do afterward will determine if their species survives. Captain Jake Morrison had been there at the beginning. He had shaken the clawed hand of Ambassador Vorath 15 years ago. He had believed in peace, had worked for it, had given everything to make it real. Now he was chosen to deliver humanity's final terms to the Catherine High Command. Morrison's ship entered Catherine space under a flag of truce. The journey took 3 days. During that time, he reviewed the casualty lists. The numbers were almost too large to understand. 8 million dead in the initial attacks. 20,000 more lost during the war. Whole families gone, entire communities erased. He carried a data crystal with all their names. 2 million from New Haven. 3 million from Terra Verde. 2 million from Port Freedom. 3 million from New Dublin, and the 20,000 soldiers and Marines who had died fighting to stop more attacks. The Catherine homeworld was a massive planet, with purple oceans and red continents. It had been the capital of an empire that spanned 17 systems. Now, it was a besieged world, surrounded by human warships, waiting to learn its fate. Morrison stood in the Catherine throne room. It was a massive chamber, designed to intimidate visitors. The Catherine High Command sat on elevated platforms, looking down at anyone who came before them. It was meant to show their superiority. Morrison was not intimidated. He had seen real power. It did not come from sitting on high chairs. It came from the ability to destroy your enemies and choosing not to. You offered us surrender terms, Morrison began. We have reviewed them. They are rejected. The Catherine leaders shifted uncomfortably. The senior general, Craxith, spoke in a voice that tried to sound confident but failed. Then what do you want? Total destruction? The extinction of our species? No, Morrison said calmly. We want justice. And we want to make sure you never threaten anyone again. He activated the hologram, displaying humanity's terms. As the Catherines read them, their expressions changed from defiant to desperate. The terms were harsh but not genocidal. The Catherine Empire would be dissolved. Every conquered world would be freed, and given the choice of independence or human protection. The Catherine military would be reduced to 10% of its current size, enough to defend their homeworld but nothing more. Catherine war criminals would face trial for their actions. Those found guilty would serve sentences helping to rebuild the destroyed colonies. The Catherine government would pay reparations for a century, not in currency but in labor and resources. Human peacekeepers would be stationed on the Catherine homeworld for 100 years. Any sign of military buildup would result in immediate action. The Catherines would be watched, judged, and held accountable for everything they did. "This is slavery," Craxith protested. "You want to make us servants." Morrison looked at him coldly. "No. Slavery is what you planned for humanity. What we are offering is justice. You destroyed our colonies. You will help rebuild them. You killed our people. You will work to make amends. You threatened the galaxy. You will be watched to make sure you never do it again." He held up the data crystal. "This contains the names of everyone you killed. 8,020,347 people. Every single one had a name, a family, a life. You took all of that away because you thought we were weak." Morrison's voice grew harder. "You saw our peace as weakness. You believed our kindness was cowardice. You were wrong. We offered you 15 years of friendship, and you returned fire and fury. Now you understand what happens when humanity returns that fury. You wanted to conquer us. Instead, you have destroyed yourselves." The Catherine High Command sat in silence. They had no choice. They had lost the war completely. If they refused these terms, humanity would continue the advance. And everyone knew that humanity had been holding back. The human fleets had avoided civilian targets, had followed rules of war that the Catherines never respected. If those restraints were removed, the Catherine species might not survive. "We accept," Craxith finally said, his voice broken. Morrison nodded. "Good. The first shipment of aid will arrive tomorrow. You will distribute it to your people. Human engineers will help repair your damaged infrastructure. But understand this. You are being given a chance that you never gave others. 12 species fell to your empire. 9 of them no longer exist. We could do the same to you. We are choosing not to. Remember that choice the next time you think about conquest." As Morrison left the throne room, he felt no satisfaction, only weariness. The war was over. Justice would be served. But the dead would still be dead. Dr. Laura Price stood on the observation deck of the Retribution, watching Catherine ships depart from conquered worlds. Those worlds were free now. Some would request human protection, others would rebuild on their own. But all of them were grateful that the Catherine Empire was finally gone. Lieutenant Helen Drake stood beside her. Helen had fought in 17 battles, had destroyed 6 Catherine warships personally, and had been promoted 3 times. She wore her medals with pride, but she also carried the weight of what she had done. "Was it worth it?" Helen asked. "The war, the killing, all of it. Was it worth it?" Laura thought about the question for a long time. "Yes," she finally answered. "Not because we wanted war, but because we tried everything else first. We offered peace for 15 years. We gave them every chance. They chose violence. We responded. Do you think they learned anything?" Helen asked. "I hope so," Laura said. "But even if they did not, the galaxy did. Every species out there watched us offer peace for 15 years. They watched the Catherines attack us, and they watched us win. Now they know. Humanity prefers peace, but we are not weak, we are not helpless. We just choose not to be violent unless we have no other choice." The Catherine word for humanity had changed. Before the war, they had called humans the soft ones, a term that meant weak and pathetic. Now they called humans the patient storm. It was a good name. A storm could be calm and peaceful. It could sit quietly, causing no harm. But when it was pushed, when it was forced to move, it became unstoppable. That was humanity. Admiral Hayes gave her final report to President Cross. The war was over. Casualties had been lighter than expected on the human side, though every loss still hurt. The Catherine Empire was dismantled. The freed worlds were safe. Human space was secure. What happens now? Cross asked. We rebuild, Hayes said. We remember, and we stay ready. The galaxy has seen what we can do. Some species will respect us for it. Others might fear us. A few might try to test us. We need to be ready for all of it. Cross nodded. And peace? Do you think we can still have that? Hayes smiled sadly. Peace is always possible. But it requires two sides to want it. We learned that lesson. We will not forget it. The message spread across the galaxy, carried by traders, diplomats, and refugees from the Catherine Empire. Humanity had arrived in the galactic community with open hands and open hearts. They had offered friendship to everyone they met. But those who mistook that openness for weakness had learned a terrible lesson. The other species talked about what had happened. Some admired humanity's restraint and victory. Others feared what humanity might do if truly threatened. But all of them understood one thing. Humans were not prey. On New Haven, now being rebuilt with both human and Catherine labor, a memorial was erected. It listed the names of all 8,020,347 people who had died. At the bottom, an inscription read, "We offered peace. We received war. We responded with justice. May the galaxy remember." Dr. Amy Sullivan visited the memorial during its dedication. She had spent 15 years developing technology to help the Catherines. Then, she had spent a year developing weapons to defeat them. Now she was back to helping, working to make sure the reconstruction went smoothly. "Do you think they understand?" asked Ben Carter, standing beside her. He had also worked with the Catherines during the peace years. "Some of them do," Amy replied. "The ones working on the reconstruction, the ones who see what they destroyed, they understand. Others still think they were justified. But it does not matter what they think. What matters is that they cannot hurt anyone else." Commander Rick Palmer commanded the peacekeeping force on the Catherine homeworld. It was strange work, protecting the same species that had killed millions of humans. But it was necessary. Humanity had not fought to become conquerors. They had fought to stop conquest. "How long do you think we will need to stay?" asked one of his officers. Rick looked at the Catherine cities below. 100 years, as agreed. Maybe less if they prove themselves. Maybe more if they do not. But we will stay as long as needed, because that is what peace requires. Not just winning the war, but winning the peace that follows. President Cross gave his final address on the war's first anniversary. People across human space watched, remembering where they were when New Haven fell. When the war began. When victory came. "A year ago," Cross said, "we learned a hard lesson. Peace cannot be achieved through kindness alone. It requires strength. It requires the will to defend what is right. But most importantly, it requires the wisdom to know when to fight and when to forgive." He paused, looking directly at the camera. "We fought because we had no choice. We won because we were prepared. And now we rebuild because we choose to. The Catherines will never forget what happened when they attacked us. But more importantly, they will never forget what happened after. We could have destroyed them. We chose justice instead." Cross smiled slightly. "That is who we are. We are the patient storm. We prefer peace. We work for peace. We sacrifice for peace. But we will defend ourselves when necessary. And the galaxy will remember." As the broadcast ended, people across human space returned to their lives. The war was over. The rebuilding continued. And humanity moved forward, changed by what they had experienced but not broken by it. The Catherine Empire was gone. But the Catherine people survived. Some hated humanity for their defeat. Others were grateful to be alive. Most simply worked to rebuild and tried to understand what had happened. Lieutenant Helen Drake sat in her quarters, looking at a picture of her family. They had died on New Haven. Victims of a war they never saw coming. She had avenged them, had fought for them, had helped win the war, but they were still gone. "I hope it was worth it," Helen whispered to the picture. I hope the peace we build now lasts longer than the one we tried before. Time would tell. But humanity had learned its lesson. Peace was always the goal. But peace required strength, vigilance, and the will to fight when all other options failed. The galaxy had witnessed the fall of the Catherine Empire. They had seen humanity offer peace for 15 years. They had seen that peace rejected with fire and fury. And they had seen humanity's response. Now every species in the galaxy knew. Humanity was kind. Humanity was generous. Humanity wanted peace, but humanity was not weak. And those who mistook their patience for cowardice would face the storm. The war was over, the peace had begun, and humanity would guard that peace with everything they had, for as long as necessary, ready to defend it but hoping never to need to. That was the price of fire and fury. And humanity had paid it willingly, so that no one else would have to. 2 months at current pace, replied her chief of staff. Maybe less, if they keep falling back this quickly. Cole nodded slowly. Good. The Catherines wanted fire and fury. They are about to get more than they can handle. The galaxy watched in shock as humanity tore through the Catherine Empire. Other species had tried to resist the Catherines and failed. Some had been destroyed. Others had been enslaved. But humans were doing what no one thought possible. They were winning. And the Catherines, who had studied humanity for 15 years, finally understood what they had missed. They had seen humans offering peace and assumed it meant humans could not make war. They had been so very wrong. Humanity had not offered peace because they were weak. They had offered peace because they were strong enough to choose it. And now that the choice was taken away, the Catherines were learning what humans had chosen not to be. The predators had become the prey, and the galaxy would never forget it. Reminded everyone what humans were capable of when pushed to their limit. We are not sheep, one message declared. We are not prey. We are humans, and we have conquered our own world, our own solar system, and the stars beyond. The Catherines think they can defeat us because we offered peace. They will learn that peace was a choice, not a weakness. And now, that choice is gone. The messages worked. Across human space, people rallied to the war effort. They volunteered, they donated. They worked around the clock to support the military. The Cathrons had united humanity in a way nothing else ever had. General Harper looked at the final mobilization reports. Everything was ready. The weapons were deployed. The soldiers were trained. The fleet was armed and waiting. Humanity had transformed from a peaceful civilization into a military power in just a few months. Send the orders, Harper said. Begin Operation Retribution. The war was about to truly begin, and the Catherines would soon discover what fire and fury really meant. War. Admiral Hayes returned to her office and began issuing orders. Every ship was to be recalled and armed. Every soldier was to report for duty. Every station and colony was to prepare for attack. The Catherines wanted a war. They were about to get one. Dr. Laura Price sat in her quarters, thinking about the Catherines and their mistake. They had studied humanity for 15 years, but they had fundamentally misunderstood what they were seeing. They thought humanity's desire for peace meant humanity was incapable of war. They were about to learn the difference between inability and choice. Humanity had chosen peace. When that choice was taken away, the Catherines would discover what humanity had chosen not to be. The war had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The final message from the Catherine High Command arrived on Earth 3 days later. It was not an apology. It was not an explanation. It was a demand. The Catherines wanted humanity to surrender. They wanted the colonies, the resources, and the people. Humans would become servants to the Catherine Empire. The message ended with simple words that burned into every human who heard them. You have shown us what you are. We accept your submission. President Cross stood before the United Earth Assembly. His face was hard, his eyes cold. The man who had championed peace for 15 years spoke words he had hoped never to say. The time for peace has ended. Prepare for war.